Welcome to the Lion Zone. I'm your host, Steve Johan, where you learn to be the lion and not the prey in a world of hungry jackals and vicious wolves. I'm your host, and for more about me, visit stevejohan.com and find me on Substack under stevejohan.substack.com. I've got another great show lined up for you, another great guest who I just met. And before I introduce my guest, I want to start things out with a song that will set the stage for today's show. And I think some of you guys are going to know this one. Here we go. All right. Laurie, do you know who that is?
I don't. I know the song very well, but I could not tell you who is singing that.
That was Patrick Hernandez. That was Born to Be Alive, big hit in 1979. I don't know if he ever had another big hit like that. The lyrics go, we were born to be alive. We were born to be alive. Repeat, repeat. People ask me why I never find a place to stop and settle down, 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 but I never wanted all those things. People need to justify their lives. Yes, we were born to be alive, to be alive, to be alive. And I thought this was a great song to establish today's theme of being alive and doing all we can to make it the best we can in a world where dark forces wish us to be dead, 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 sick, independent, miserable, and not alive. My guest is Laurie Carter Bledsoe. She is the founder and co-founder of Elev11.com. That's ELEV3N.com, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. A holistic practitioner directory guide, and a whole lot more. She and her husband have run an all-natural cattle ranch for years where they raise clean, grass-fed beef they sell to select clients. She is an expert in permagardening and holistic living, and I thought it would be great to have you on, Laurie. So thank you and welcome to the show.
And it's Laurie Curtain.
Laurie Curtain.
Yes.
How'd that happen?
Carter is who I work with.
Oh, okay. Well, you get these, you get this stuff here and everything. So why don't you begin by telling us your story of how'd you get into ranching, permaculture, and finally with launching this holistic directory. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, how you kind of ended up down this road.
Well, I actually started with a near-death experience. It was my second one. The first one I didn't really realize was a near-death experience because I didn't do the tunnel and the light. And with the second one, I had the swine flu. And I spent 5 days in intensive care and 5 days in critical care. But in that 5 days intensive care, I was traveling to the other world back and forth repeatedly. And they just could not keep me in my body. And when I was in the other world, the angels were saying to me that this wasn't your time, that I was on here, this earth, to do something. And I was meant to learn energy work and to become a hospice caregiver. Well, I had been a doula for 20 some years at that point. So I had brought babies into this world. I was a lactation consultant. I worked with essential oils, but being a hospice worker was not what I was like, oh, this is a great deal. Dead people were not my thing back then. So I was a little, when I got better, I really was a little bit hesitant. And then to do energy work. So I became a Reiki master to do the energy work first, and a reconnection healer. And then I started on my hospice journey, which I joined the Twilight Brigade. Daniel Brinkley, I don't know if you've heard of him, Saved by the Light. He runs this from a near-death experience. He was told to run a hospice training group. And then I trained people to do hospice, and it ended up being one of my favorite jobs I've ever done in my life. So I combined those things, and through that, working on people, my co-founders, my sister and my friend Brian, we were working on my friend Brian, who I met from being a doula. I was head doula for his wife, 63 hours of labor. So we got to know each other really well.
Wow. Wow. That's a
And
lot.
yeah, so and it we got, my sister and I got him on the table and did energy work. He never had anything like that before, and his really his life just exploded. He got off the table, being able to see different layers of auras, astral traveling, and he's like, wow, everyone should be able to find these a Reiki master. And so through that, 11 was born. I was just downloaded with the whole concept of how to bring this into fruition. It's not from me, it's definitely from the Lord. The name, we didn't name it ourselves. All of a sudden we were talking about the name 11, and the 3 in there is for the divine trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, mother, father, child. The 3 goes on, and that's why we use the Om sign, because we want to bring God into everything we do. So the Om is quite often the universal symbol of God and the sound the universe makes. And then our colors, from purple to green, is our, third eye opening with our heart chakra, and then that joining together of the blue in the middle is to be able to speak our truth. So if you just live in your heart and you don't have the wisdom to go along with it, then you're missing half the thing. It doesn't take you down the right road. The same as if you live in wisdom with no heart. So it's the combination, that 18 inches that connects your third eye to your heart chakra, enables you to speak your truth with the Lord's power right behind you. And so that's how the 11 started. And 11, we figure everyone who joins us in our circle is the 12th person. And 12 is just the most incredible number. I mean, that's the number of completion. And 11 is also, it's the gateway. It's the manifestation number. The Lord uses a lot of numbers in the Bible. And so we believe that numbers do have an important significance. And through that, 11 was born. What we do is we connect holistic practitioners to clients. And we are not live at the moment, and as of February 2024, that the end of this month we will be live and we will start onboarding practitioners. But our whole goal is to be a gateway to holistic health. DIYs, we have a healing library. Eventually we want to have a marketplace, an app, where it's a one-stop shopping. We want to be the place where everyone goes for healing and health. And so from the ancient forms of medicine, the ancient forms of healing, to what people are discovering today, and how to do that. How do we live a life holistically? And how I end up, I'm down at my ranch right now in Florida, this is a ranch, it's a generational. I think 1, 2, 3, I'm 4th generation here on the
Wow.
ranch.
So it's like a century farm kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. My father-in-law, they own a century farm. So it's over 100 years been in the family. And we're actually trying to figure out who's going to take over, because he's leasing out the land to do, and the neighbor, um, friends of the family, this is in Monmouth, Oregon, so just west of Salem, and it's like 200 acres. Used to be 600, got divided up after the sisters and he, after the parents died. But nonetheless, we're like, okay, so who of the 4 children of his children, who's going to take over? His daughter and her husband, they're missionaries, and now they're homestead and homeside, and they live there, but they're not farmers, and no one else is a farmer. So we're
Yeah.
all trying to, what are we going to do? This is like 200 acres of land. So I understand the idea of having multiple generations. I told my wife, well, we could run cattle on it. And then she's like, but are you going to be down there? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be down there. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your ranch.
Yeah, so the aunties, the great aunts that lived on here, both of them have passed. And so we had a caretaker on here and he just moved off. My husband, when he retired, we about 7 years ago, I'm in my 60s. We're both in our 60s. I'm technically retired, even though I'm running the company.
Right.
So well, yeah, I work, sometimes 80 hours a week, but I'm not getting paid at the moment because we haven't launched. But so we have that availability to travel between Pennsylvania and here. So we'll be looking for a new caretaker. We have one caretaker oversees the cows, but he's not going to oversee my gardens. And so what that entails is I really studied. I was not a gardener. I have 14 kids and 34 grandchildren. Um,
Wow.
I got legal custody in the courts of my first kids when I was 20 and later adopted them. I had a sort of save the world mentality right from my youth, and I fought for those kids at 20 and I got them. And then I went on to have I have three biological kids and the rest are step or foster, but not foster through the courts. I It's hard to say what kids that you find that are troubled, that don't really have a home, and you or need extra support, and you raise them. So all my kids are doing well and flourishing, and lots of grandchildren, but no one really wants to take on a ranch. So they we do wilderness camping in Canada. So when they're all working, they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s now. When they get time off, everyone, as many people as they can, go to Canada to do wilderness camping. So the time to come down and run the ranch, people only usually get 2 to 3 weeks off
Right.
for vacation. So they choose to go to Canada instead of the ranch. So basically, the running of the ranch is left to my husband and I.
Well, that's very interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit more. But you bring up an interesting thing. It's because we just met yesterday, or a day before, I guess, and I invited you to come on the show because for other people who don't know, I also produce a couple other podcasts. One is Mill Creek View, Tennessee, and the other one's The Flame. And I get to meet people that are wonderful like you, Laurie. And then and I just launched my show. This is my 8th episode. And it's like, oh, I'm just going to snag one off the flame. Um, but I want to back up and we got a lot of territory to cover today. But
Yeah.
the terms of Reiki and energy, and for a lot of people in the West, and for me, for many years, being a follower of Christ, steeped in the church. I'm a Bible student. I study to show myself approved, so I'm really, really dig in. But I have dabbled in the sense of looking into reading books, being around people who do the energy fields, who understand that the body is electrical, that there's
Yeah.
currents, there's energy that flows through. And even my dentist said, well, Steve, we put when Novocaine in there, we're blocking the circuit so that the electricity doesn't go through and it can't connect to that circuit. And this is years ago when he told me this. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's what numbing is they're just blocking the flow of electricity going through those nerves. And then when I had some surgery, they cut into the tendons, and I thought, well, gee, okay. And they got whatever it was and they fixed it. And it took 6 months before I didn't have numbness and tingling. And it was like, well, they all those nerve endings are electrical. It's like having removing circuits or cutting off little things. And I went, okay, I get this. And then the idea, you see the Eastern religions, they talk about chakras and they talk about the colors and the different points in the body, and acupuncture, acupressure, all based on this. But a lot of people will say, well, that's Hinduism, and Hinduism's about reincarnation, has nothing to do with biblical things, which it doesn't. And so we lump in those Eastern practices or Near East practices in with the false religion, as I would call it. And therefore we poo-poo it and we don't bring it into our lives. And yet we will go to a medical practitioner who's been steeped in Western medicine, which is a lot of it based in, if you got a broken arm, you got to have some surgery. They do a phenomenal job when it comes to that. But it's also steeped in not a holistic approach as much as biological. They're looking at you as a body. Here's a drug. Here's a way to deal with and cope with the symptoms, the issues, but not getting to the root. I mean, there are some, don't get me wrong, there are great doctors out there who look for the root. But so we go that route. So we go the extreme the other way. We neglect what is in the Eastern because of fear of the relationship to Hinduism and all that. And yet we will go over here to a medical practitioner, a medical industry, that if you get cancer, it's like, well, there's three choices: burn, cut, or poison. And
Right.
it's like, well, what about the natural ways? What about the herbal ways? What about we don't talk about that. We may even think that they work, but we can't talk about it because the insurance companies don't cover it. And so the catch-22 is, a lot of us here in the West have been brought up since childhood with a Western medical industry based in pharmaceuticals, who actually own all the journals now. And so we've been told, don't go to the Eastern side because that's mysticism, that's poisonous. And yet we will poison our body. And a lot of good
Yeah.
Christians that I admire have died recently from cancer in their 60s. And I'm like, you could have lived longer if you had gone to some of the people I know that actually do a full holistic approach. So talk to us about that, because I'm really have been availing myself to a lot of individuals like yourself about talking about these energy fields and moving it away from the new agey kind of stuff and the Eastern mysticism stuff, and talk to us about how it's still a real process of seeing one's body as a whole and not just a part.
Well, if you look at it, every depiction of Jesus, not every, but most depiction of Jesus and Mary, they have a halo around them. That what you're seeing is their aura. So it's not really Eastern, if you think about it, is when you have that divine light coming down through you from the Lord, that and you're open to that, the more your body glows with that energy. And that's why Jesus is always pictured with that aura around his head. So we
Okay.
don't look at that and say, oh, look, you have a halo. That's Eastern philosophy. Why? Because it was just natural. People understood that we are energy beings. And so when you're doing Reiki, all you're doing is you're opening up your crown chakra, the energy points that are at the top of your head, to the divine. It's the universal life energy from God. And what you're doing is filling you're consciously filling your body up with the Lord's light, and then allowing it to flow through you into somebody else. So when you're sick, like say that you had a liver problem or a lung problem, usually that organ does not have enough energy to keep itself healthy, whether it's from toxins or poisons or emotional trauma. And so what you're doing with Reiki is you're just channeling the Lord's light and energy through your body into that person to give it the energy it needs to heal itself. So we're not actually healers when we're doing energy work. We're giving the energy to the body that so it allows it to heal itself.
Would you say that you're actually unblocking, you're
Yeah.
taking the blockages that are within your body? Let's say your kidney. You and I were talking about celery and the role celery plays in cleansing our bodies.
Yep.
And that if a person has a bad kidney, they're going through dialysis, then no, you shouldn't eat celery because it dumps too much toxin into the body, and the kidney, unhealthy kidney, can't handle it. But
Right.
what you're saying is, so when you're, and I've been doing a lot of reading, and I have for years, about the emotion and the spirit and the
Yep.
physical, that when you're bound up emotionally, that emotion can actually manifest itself in physical ailments. So
Yeah.
I've understood that aspect of things, where emotions, bitterness, anger, rage, whatever, it binds up, and pretty soon it can manifest. You start seeing people that are just, it actually changes their whole facial features. It can change their whole being. And I've understood that when you figure out what's causing that and you release it, you get some relief. But the part, what you're saying is, by manipulating, by working with pressure points, acupressure, all these kind of things, because I've been looking into Ralphing, which is
Yeah.
a process of stages of getting your body stretched and getting into the deep muscles. Because when you do that, you're releasing not only the toxins, but you're releasing emotional energy that you've stored up in your body.
Right.
Am I kind of going in the right direction here?
Absolutely. That's and we store and you can see someone's whole personal, you can see when someone walks in the room, and we all experience everybody else's energy. You people in the 60s said the vibe, oh, it was a good vibe. What are they talking about? It's the energy. Oh, that person's energy wasn't great. So we have it in our language, we just don't
Yes.
understand what we're saying. Like someone who can walk in with a really bad energy into a room and completely change the room.
Oh yeah.
And you in a miserable mood, and someone comes in that you just love and they're great energy and they're like, hey, how are you? And so excited, and all of a sudden you feel amazing. You forget about your headache, you jump up, you give them a hug, and you go on with your life. What is that? That's a sharing of energy. And if you go to the Heart Math Institute, which I think is an amazing place, it does all the studying on all this stuff. You, our hearts are like a Taurus field.
What is it called?
Heart Math Institute.
Heart Map.
Math, as in mathematics.
Oh, Heart Math Institute.
Institute. Yep.
Okay.
And they study all this. And the so a torus field looks like sort of like a donut, and you have an inner and outer torus field, and you are like the hole in the middle of the donut. And so the energy is constantly coming in and out, and it makes a circular thing. When you are really high vibrational energy, someone can feel you coming, and you can charge the other people around you. That's why, when someone says, oh, they're invading my personal space, it's they're stepping into your Taurus field, and it's sometimes affronting. If you don't like someone's energy, you definitely do not want them in your field. But if you're in love and feeling amazing, all you want is to mingle that energy field with them. And as soon as they're next to you, feel better. It's like when a little child falls down and their mother gives them kisses on their boo-boos, they feel 100 times better. Why? You're transferring that energy and that love that actually does enormous amount of healing. Um, it's so that's one of the things. And also, so we have this energy, and so Reiki is putting energy into the body. And when reconnection technique is, you're working with the aura around. So if you pass your hand over or bounce it, so you can start feeling the energy that's coming off your body. Now, someone who's has is particularly sick or has an injury, you can massage that aura field and bring it out. You're playing with it like a musician would play with sound. And so you're massaging, pulling it, and you can pull a person's energy like 10, 15 feet easily off of their body. And then so they get up just feeling revived. I worked on somebody, an acquaintance of mine who'd fallen off a ladder and broken his back. And he was in a hospital bed in his living room, and he hardly had his legs weren't paralyzed, but he wasn't really walking. His legs felt numb or dead. But when I was doing the energy work on, when I was doing the reconnection, it took maybe an hour and a half to feel anything off of his body. And
Oh,
eventually I was able to pull the energy off, move it down from the top of his body down to the bottom of his feet and out the feet like 5 feet. And by the time I left, he had gotten up and walked out and was sitting on his deck. And so, and
wow.
all that is moving energy. So, and that's what we're all energetic beings. Anybody can do this. That's the great thing, is that you're not a physician. There's not anybody. I teach energy work. I'm a master teacher with Reiki. It isn't, it's all right there, and people just don't realize it. Have you ever seen, they used to be really popular, I think in the 90s. It was the magic eye pictures that it just looks like all different
Yeah,
spots.
we got one of those at my
Yeah.
house, and you
Yeah,
have
you
to kind of
exactly.
you start going. What I do is I just cross my eyes, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, when you cross your eyes, all of a sudden it comes alive, and then you
Yes.
pull back and you can see it. And yes, I know exactly what you're saying. And then there's
So
also the image of, it looks like just some images, and then there's a picture like the image of of Christ, and it's like the same thing. It's like a little thing. People will wear it, and you're like, what is that? I'm like, just look at it differently, and all of a sudden, oh, there's a guy there. Yeah, there is.
right.
So yes, I know what you're
So
talking
that's
about.
how energy works, is energy being able to see it. So if you do that blurring out and not really focusing, you can actually teach yourself to see aura. So then you can see that it's there. It's not like it's some mystical thing. Everyone has an aura. Everyone has layers of auras. They look like a rainbow. Once you learn to see auras, you can see where there's blank spots or dark spots that you can actually go and work on to bring that energy on your. You can do it yourself, and you can work on other people. So it seems like it's a mystical thing, but it really isn't. Um, it's, you can, when you're having a crying baby, you can hold a baby and do energy work on it, and the baby can settle right down. So that's the main thing. We're all energetic beings, and if we can just learn that basis fact, we can move on from there of how we create the best energy for ourselves to be as holistic as we can be. And that's the food we eat, the TV shows we watch, the conversations we get in, the how we grow our food. What are they feeding the meat you were eating, the cows and the chicken? What are they growing and spraying on the fruits and vegetables? All that creates a different energy in your body. And so it's like, how do you transmute that? How do you get past that? How do you become wholesome and healthy again? Because that's the whole point. When you're wholesome and healthy and feel alive, no one runs over you. Your brain is active, your heart is active. You are so clued into the world and what's going on. And when you are sick, you don't care about anything. If you have the throw ups or the flu, you don't care what's going on in your neighbor's house or the world or who's the president or anything else. You will let anybody run over you just so you just aren't feeling like this anymore. And that's where the pharmaceutical comes in. Just take this little magic pill, which causes 10 other problems and pollutes your body. So if we could get back to natural health, if we could get back to understanding how to take care of our bodies, it actually changes the world.
And
That really is the thing, because then people are motivated to look outside themselves to change their environment around them.
I'm we're going to cover, and this is really good because I'm investigating you and I'm learning about what you're saying, and it reminds me of Christ talks about the light in your eyes and the darkness in your
Mhm.
body. He talks about that if you're filled, and it's like a bucket. He says like it's a bucket that's filled with water and it overflows. And I've used this explanation years ago. I was sharing it. I was going to put it in a seminar, but called empty buckets or full buckets. And all the injuries, all the things that come into your life, put holes in your bucket so that as God pours the water in, the living water, it just flows out the bottom. But if you're a
Yeah,
healed person, those holes are gone. So as God pours his living water into it, it overflows and you can start pouring it into everybody else's bucket and you can just keep
exactly.
doing it. And I'm thinking, okay, so now the picture of energy and of light and of aura and just God's spirit being poured out through a person. And if you're unhealthy, and you're self-focused, whether you're wounded, you're healing, or whatever, you don't have the capacity to pour it out to others because you're sucking everything in. It's like watching an old Star Trek show or something where you're the dark energy is being sucked into you. You know, you're the alien. You walk around, you touch, and you remove all the salts from them, and then they die. And I'm like, that's what negative people do. That's what dependent people do. That's what sick people do. That's what victimized people do, and we can go on and on. And when we think about this, it's like Jesus came to set the captives free. And this is not just a spiritual thing, but a physical thing, an emotional thing, a energetic thing, a life thing. And that's why I started out the show with we are born to be alive. We are not born to
Yeah,
be dead. We are
absolutely.
not born to be slaves. Even a person who is a slave, if they are tapped into the Lord in this energy, then they can still live and have hope. And and so am I kind of going in some of that direction that you're talking about?
Absolutely. If you look at the New Testament and you think about what Jesus did, almost all of his miracles had to do with healing. Now, he did do the wine and a few other things, but he did healing on people. Why? Because when someone is healed, it's a different story.
Yes.
That they have clarity. They're able to be out there being useful to the world. They understand what the government's doing. They understand all the stuff that's going on. And so that's to me is what our main goal is on 11 is to get as many practitioners of different modalities on there, to have a free newsletter so people can find out how to do, home things. How do you make your own deodorant? How do you make your own toothpaste? How do you make your own shampoo, or hand lotion? So you know what's in all these things. And so we're just taking exactly what the Lord is telling us to do, is healing. So what do we do for healing of the nations? Now, everyone I believe in this world has a different job.
Yes.
All meant to be healers of our own self, but we're not necessarily meant to be healers of everybody else. We have to have the politicians and the police officers and the doctors, like allopathic. If I'm getting a car wreck and my bone of my leg is sticking out, take me to the hospital
Right.
and get me set up,
Right.
and then send me a Reiki master. And so that's the other thing is we have a hospital near us in Pennsylvania, Abington, and they have Reiki masters. And they have absolutely proven that having someone have Reiki done on them before and after surgery makes a difference, like prayer does. Prayer absolutely makes a difference, especially in surgery. My husband, 2 years ago, my mom has a house next door. My dad has passed, but a branch had come down the size of a tree on the roof. And he was up there cutting it off chopping it up with a chainsaw with a friend. And when he went to step on the ladder to get off, it slid and threw him down on a cement pad. He fractured his pelvis in 4 places. And when they went to do the surgery on him, he broke right. It's called your main thing broke right in half. And so there was a big wide space between the bones, and they thought they would have to do a 6-inch screw here and a 6-inch screw there. They x-rayed him right before they took him into surgery. I was right there. They showed how the crack is, and they're going to have trouble pulling it together. I had prayer circles around the country praying for him. Within 15 minutes, when they got into surgery, he thought they'd taken an x-ray of the wrong person, because the whole first part of his pelvis had sealed, already closed, and he only needed a screw on the top part. He said he had never seen anything like that in his entire life.
Yes.
He had to go check things over and over. And that's 100% from the Lord. That's
Yes.
from people praying and asking for his healing. And the same thing from that, he has a heart defect that causes his heart to race. And so from falling off the roof, he got a blood clot in his upper left chamber of his heart. And we didn't know it was there, and it let loose, and he had a major stroke 9 months later. And is doing remarkably. And it's the same thing. We have had just the most enormous amount of people come in praying for him, and it changes your life. So besides being a healing company with 11, we are totally Christian and God-based, and we start our meetings with prayer. Lots of times we end with prayer. We pray for each other constantly. It's just part of our lifestyle. I get up at 4:30 every morning, and I do an hour or two of devotional to the Lord every day. That's just my thing, and that's just what I do. And so everything I do is centered in God. It's like, is this what the Lord wants me to do? Is this where I should be going? And that's how I've directed my life, most of my life.
You know, I appreciate that, and I am 100% into the prayer camp, and I've seen miraculous things take place. Um, I want to go back to something you said earlier on about about astro traveling. I listened
Hmm.
to a testimony of a man who's a pastor out of a Northern California church, and a individual came to him in his life and said, "You're going to be doing spiritual warfare, and you better prepare for it." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You better get prepared for it. You're going to be doing some spiritual warfare with demons." And he's like, no, I don't want to hear anything. And that, the guy, that was like years and years. And then I don't know, I think 6, 7 years later, the guy comes around and says, "Okay, it's time. You're going to do some spiritual work here." And the guy's like, I don't know. I don't know. And then within a very short time, they meet a girl, and she's got all sorts of problems. Turns out she was possessed.
Right.
And then they had to learn all about the process of what it means to cast out demons and go to war for spiritual warfare and the whole bit. And long story short, this daughter, this woman, they had got her set free, but her father, who wanted to keep her within, it turns out that she had been used by her father to kill her younger sister as a ritual. So this
Right.
does go on. This stuff definitely goes on. This is how they gain their power, because they've tapped
Yeah.
into the dark forces, the demons that are around us. And so, to make a long story short, the man that owned this woman was talking through the woman, the daughter at this point. The father was talking through the daughter and going, "No, I'm taking her over. I'm taking her over." It was no longer a spirit, it was the spirit of the father. Well, the father was
Right.
anti-Malay. And so they went to town and he said, God, can I cut the cord? It's called the silver cord. And God said,
Yep.
yes. And they all prayed and they cut the silver cord in the spirit. And immediately the girl was set free and the dad died. Anton LaVey died. And because he was out of his body and he was in the spirit realm and he had inhabited another woman, his daughter, because they had that connection. And I thought that was the first time I ever heard it. And then I thought and I stopped and I said, I think that's where a lot of things that assassinations, a lot of things take place. The individual says, well, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, and they had gone through MK Ultra, through the CIA and all that, and they use all these kind of techniques. And I believe now I'm going, oh my gosh, because I've read other books about other things, and I'm like, that's how the dark side works. They can actually transport themselves into another being that's receptible to this, and they can do a deed through them and then leave, and the person doesn't even know what happened. So, talk to us about your knowledge of astro traveling, because that was the first time I heard that, and I don't know if you know anything on that side, but that's why a lot of people are very careful about astro traveling, because it can be used and it can also open the gateway for the other side, the demonic, to come in and to take over. So
Absolutely.
talk to me about your experience in that area.
Well, everything is can be good and light. I mean, you can have making love and you can have rape. I mean, there's birth and death. There's constant, so nothing is ever all good or all bad. So there's a pendulum that moves. So yes, there's demonic possession and stuff like that. But instead of demonizing it, like if you're centered in God and you're doing it from that, quite often you get more attacked because your light shines so brightly in the other world that every spiritual being sees that and is attracted to it. So quite often once you start on a deeply spiritual practice, you get pretty much attacked, and it comes from all different realms, you know. But so think of this: when you're in deep prayer, say you're in deep prayer, your aunt is sick and she lives in Wyoming, and you live somewhere else in the country, and you're praying and you can see her there in the bed, and maybe she's has a heart attack or whatever it is. When you're praying, let her heart be better. That's almost like astral projecting, because you're bringing your consciousness to whatever it is you're thinking about for healing and or for information. So people have used it to look at, like, at a slaughterhouse, what are they doing with the beef? With their people have, and the government practices with this also. You can sit in your room and you can project your consciousness to whatever you're looking at, and people have been able to see clearly what is going on in someplace else. Now, could that be used for evil? Absolutely, but it can also be used for good. I have worked on so many people at a distance that are sick or unwell or emotionally upset. Someone calls you, even if they're in the same town, but you can't get to them, you can definitely sit there in prayer and send your consciousness to them, and they can feel soothed and feel better. So that's what I think of as astral projection, because if you think of it, so we have our main soul contained within our body, but that's what the energy field outside of us, it can't be contained in just this meat suit. So that's what our aura is. So it broadens out past us, and everything has it, a plant, a leaf, and I
Right,
can tell
right.
you in a minute how easily to see it. um so when I was leaving, I must have left my body 10, 15, 20 times when I had the swine flu or whatever that was. Um, was pulled up. I could feel what my soul felt like leaving this body. It's like a foot being pulled out of a sock, and a really tight sock that you've had on all day that's uncomfortable. And I just floated up through the ceiling, I could see my husband down below. I didn't know who he was, but I knew that I knew him, sort of vaguely thing. But then there was this of freedom, and you realize you're a hugely expansive being, and you still have a body. I still had a body and arms and legs. The angel that I met that said, "No, it's not your time. You're not dying. Your body's dying, but it's not your time. That you have a mission to do, and this is not the time for you to be here." And so kept on sending me back, but when I came back into my body, it's like being put back in that sock. But that consciousness without dying can still be free. And that's what I think is being asked of us, and delving into a different realm of holistic health, is realizing that the food we eat has energy to it.
Yeah,
This
I go
The
ahead.
chemical spray has energy and negative energy to it. Everything is energy. So all you're doing with astral projection or traveling is you're taking your consciousness, which is expansive. We're so much bigger. We have so much more power than we have given ourselves, because Jesus says, even more than what I'm doing, you can do. Well, what did he mean by that? The
Yes,
are for the healing of the nation. And so
yes.
we've gotten into this idea that we're small, little
We're in a
people.
box. We've been
Yeah,
taught we're limited to a box, a set of theology, a set of doctrines, a set of beliefs. We've been programmed our entire life to believe that we are a small, that we live in this cosmos and we're so teeny. And it's like, actually, Jesus says, I've come to give life and life abundantly. And so that has been
yeah.
something on my heart, Laurie, is what does it mean to have an abundant life? Not Jeff Bezos, I got my money off of
Right.
using the system. I'm talking about having an abundant life. It's like my forefathers in the faith died so that I could have an abundant life. Holy smoke, I'm not living an abundant life. I'm living a cloistered, and then that's where that whole parable of the talents, that you have one talent, you have three talents and five, and then one goes and gets 10, another one makes it five, another one, oh, I'm fearful, and I go bury it. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's our God is saying, look, you've got a life. What are you going to do with it? And the
What are
one
you going to do with it?
and you're right. It's like we are not meant to just vegetate in front of a TV set or
No.
vegetate in front of a bong at night. We are meant to be alive,
Expansive. And
expansive.
yes, it's just like, and it doesn't mean, I think I had this conversation with you the other day, is the Lord says, be strong and of good courage. And courage is never something wonderful that you want
That's
to do.
right.
It means something terrible has happened to you, and
Yep.
you've got to face it and step up and be bigger than what you see yourself, and have the courage to face it. And it's also the story we tell ourselves. I have had the a lot of my kids have intense stories, and I don't use abuse because I don't like labeling people, but it's their stories to tell, and you deal with stuff continuously, and it's the story you tell yourself about that is the and how you live your life. So if you get a flat tire on the side of the road in the pouring rain, which happened to me last summer driving down to the ranch, you can either, and we didn't have a jack in the car, so you can either make it in a miserable experience, or you can tell yourself a story that this is an adventure and you're going to learn something out of it. And I did. I travel with a jack and make sure there's a jack in the car at all times, because it was on a trailer, and AAA does not repair um, tires on trailers. So it ended up being this great big ordeal. But if you can laugh and have fun and think the Lord is with you constantly, and it's someone could be with me and telling themselves the most horrendous story about what's going on, and they're miserable. And
Yes.
I could be sitting there and saying, this is just an adventure. It's just a thing. Nothing really is happening to me. And I can laugh and we can joke and as the rain's pouring down at us and just be fine. And and that's what life is all about, is how do we get to that point? And if we're poisoning our bodies and our mind all the time, we don't get to that point. And that's what the whatever you want to call
I
them.
call them darklings. I just call
Yeah.
them darklings. That's
Yeah.
my, I wrote a book and I talk about that the people at the top that wish to rule our lives are
Yeah.
called darklings. And it just because they're operating in the dark. Their minds are
Operating the
darkened.
dark.
They are not operating in the light. And Jesus
And
says we are called children of the light.
yes.
And that light is so important. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. And it said, then the Spirit hovered over day, and it says, and then there was light.
Yeah.
Not light. That's not the sun. That's not the moon. That didn't come till 3 days later. This is the light of God.
That's
This is
absolutely.
the light that's in each one of us. That
Yeah.
that if we can get rid of, yeah, because you're talking about the foods that we eat and this, and I was just thinking about because I'm doing a lot of research on glyphosates,
Yeah.
Roundup Ready seeds, you name
Yeah.
it. So that they can drench our wheat and drench our food, drench everything in these glyphosates and these other other chemicals to so they can kill off mold, they can kill off whatever. And I'm thinking, so you just tapped on that energetic thing. So if we're making our food out of things that kill things, we're putting in a death energy into our bodies. We don't even
That's
know
right.
this. The
Right.
process of the way we process our foods in many ways, or we grow it, or we raise it, is a death energy. It's a darkness. It's like it's designed to kill things, and yet we're putting that on the very things that we're supposed to be giving life to us. What a contradiction
Especially
of
because this stuff kills you from the inside out.
yes.
That's what the it kills the bugs. The bugs eat it and it rots their insides from the insides out. So what do you think it's doing to you? I mean, people, the consciousness, it's like we've got to stop
Wow.
taking the easy way out.
Wow.
We printed that bag of chips that has an ingredients list that you can't understand. My son makes his own potato chips. It doesn't take long. They're so amazing. It's just the oil he uses, not a seed oil, and crisps them up, put salt on them, and they're unbelievably delicious. And so it takes that consciousness of deciding that you're going to be healthy and you can still eat homemade potato chips. it's it's making a different choice than we have been. Our schools have taken away. I'll just get on this. This is a pet peeve of mine, of teaching children not to think. We have no critical thinking left. We have no
Yes.
common sense is not common, and so we're not given in our school systems. Here's how you do it. Do it. Do your homework, and don't ask questions. Don't do it any other way. Well, I'm severely dyslexic and math is not my thing. So I could figure out the math problems, but I could do it a different way than how they taught me, and I would get a zero because you had to show your
Oh, I
work.
know. I remember that. My teacher in high
Yeah.
school, I didn't understand it. I went home and I finally asked my dad, who's a chemical engineer. He knows math. I go, Dad,
Yeah.
I'm not getting this algebra at all. And he goes, well, let me show you this. And he showed me a shortcut. This plus this. He says, Steve, I don't have time at my office. Us engineers don't have time to do this long,
Yeah.
stretched out. He says, we're there to get the answers as fast as possible so we can get the project done. And he showed me a shortcut. So I'm like, oh my gosh, my eyes opened up. I can use this shortcut. I can get the right answers. I can figure it out. I wished in reality that I had learned how to apply algebra to real life because I like to build things, whatever. But nonetheless, I went to school the next day and I'm like, the teacher's doing this. I go, Mr. Olson, that was his name. Um, why don't you do the shortcut? Oh no, 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 no. I have to show you, you have to do it. I have to show you the long way. I have to give you the, and I'm like, okay. So then he would hand out the assignment, and the girl next to me and I would try to compete to see who could get the assignment done before we left the class. And I just used shortcuts.
Yeah.
I realized at that point they weren't there to help me. They were there to
No.
show me a certain way of thinking.
Yeah, and that's what if they should have congratulated children. I've put so many kids through school and they don't congratulate for thinking. They don't
No,
go, wow, that was amazing. You figured it out and you did it in a different way. You're using your brain. We are not teaching our children to use their brain, follow orders, do exactly what we say. Don't think out of the box. You'll flunk. Instead of, so they've tested kids and 95% of 5-year olds test as genius. By the time you get out of school, 5% of people test as genius. That is wrong. That we are failing on an unbelievable way. And so, what I would like, a lot of my grandkids are homeschooled,
yep,
and they're just amazing thinkers. They're creative. They can think their way out of a box. And that's, we, besides health, we've got to get to the children. You can try to rearrange this nightmare that's the political system and our government and stuff like that. But we have to get to the kids and teach them how to think. We have to get to them before they've graduated school. The system needs to be revamped completely. And part of that is like put shop back in, put art back in, put critical thinking back in, teach people how to live with the land. What do the seasons mean? What's the storm clouds mean? What does the rain mean? Why is this acid rain happening? How are we polluting our earth? To just change all of that, makes all of that comes into our body. All
yes.
of that understanding of critical thinking has to do with your body, your schooling. If a child feels put down and dumbed down, their body doesn't feel good. Don't take away the recess, put them outside, make them run, get the feet on the ground. Grounding, what a huge thing. You feel low energy, go take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground. I make my own wool shoes because the plastic on rubber on the bottom of our shoes keep us from being healthy. The earth has an enormous amount of energy to feed us. That's why everyone feels better when they go to the beach. Everyone wants to go to the beach. Why? They want to put their feet in the sand. They want to get in the ocean. It actually is healing. It's not just a mental thing.
So if you think about it, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we had, when we wear shoes or boots or whatever, they had leather. It was
Yeah,
leather
it was leather.
and leather soles, leather uppers, and
Yep.
it was all from animals. So you got your grounding through that because
Yep.
it was a natural thing. When you stand on wood, you get a grounding versus
Yep.
cement. But the fact is, you're exactly right, because all my shoes, I used to get shoes back in the 80s and in that were leather. And then, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way back, all the dress shoes were all leather
Yep.
bottoms, and you'd take them to the cobbler, the shoe repair place, and they would just put a new sole on it,
Yep.
and you'd polish them. And no wonder people were probably in better, even though they were, eating not as good a food as, like it was still production. But for centuries, we were wearing leather. So we were
Yep.
getting that natural. So you think about Jesus in his time, and they were all walking around with leather sandals, and it was
Yep.
hot. And the biggest thing for them was they had to clean their feet off when they came into the house because it was dirty because they were barefoot. They didn't have socks.
Yeah.
And then you put your nylon socks on, you put your all this stuff on, and your nylon underwear and your nylon. And so all these things are chemical versus natural. And boy,
Absolutely.
I love being barefoot, especially in the summer and stuff around where I'm at. But That is something I hadn't even thought about is our wear, our just a simple shoes and how everything is just plastics. It's all plastics.
Yep, there's a couple companies that make leather soled shoes, but even the moccasins that they used to sell in the 60s that I used to wear are still have a plastic rubber sole in them now. So
Yeah.
it's very hard. I couldn't find a good shoes. That's why I started making wool shoes on my own, which is a process, let me tell you. But I actually taught people how to make wool shoes and boots there for quite a few years. But yes, we have to get back to natural fibers. It's really, and this is what through 11, what we want to do through our healing library and our blogs is collect as much of this information as possible. So we want to be the largest database in the world for holistic health. How do you live naturally with the world, with the environment? How do you easily just heal yourself? If you put on a little energy Geiger counting like the electricians use, and you tape it to your skin and stick the electrode in the earth, if you have rubber shoes on, it hardly moves at all. If you take your rubber shoes off and stand on the ground, it goes phew,
Wow.
instantly, instantly.
So
It
you're
does.
so you're connecting your body back into the energy field that is the earth itself,
Right. It's like how you take people can run batteries off a potato,
right?
of a plant. We are have way more energy than a potato or a plant. We
Well,
are the a battery. And
that's
that's the energy. Get back to the aura. That's what people can see. I wanted to give someone just a really, anyone who's watching this, it doesn't understand about auras. Go out in the sunshine when you get a warm day, put on a pair of shorts and take a leaf off of a plant and just set it on your leg. Look at the leaf, not quite at the leaf, sort of off to the a little bit above, or you, if it's a big enough leaf, you can look sort of in the middle and do that magic eye thing where you blur your, that we were talking before, and the image pulls out. That's the same type of thing you're going to do to learn how to see auras and energy fields. If you do that, all of a sudden around the leaf, it will start glowing. You will see it looks exactly like Avatar. So I've gotten to the point where I can train my eyes where I can go outside and it looks the same as Avatar looks. The everything glow. You can see the energy off of something.
wow.
And everyone can do this. It's surprising. I have never taken someone out and done this leaf thing on the leg on a sunny day where they haven't seen it. And I'm talking within 2 or 3 minutes. Now your eyes will want to focus back in the leaf and you got to unfocus it again over and over. And then you can move to looking at a tree in the horizon and you blur your eyes out just above and all of a sudden you'll see a white line that will appear around the tree and then all of a sudden the energy will start going. And then you can start scanning the things and you can see everything has an aura. And as you do that, you can also, the more you do that, the more you'll start seeing the layers and then colors will start coming out. At first, it's usually just a white line. The thing on the leaf on your leg will almost always be like a brilliant pink or orange, occasionally a green or yellow color, but it's almost pink or orange at first. That's the first aura that a new leaf will give off. Also, if you see an airplane go overhead, do a soft focus on that, and you will see around the airplane a complete circle as it's flying along, as it's putting off its energy field. And it just looks like a round circle going, and the airplane's in the middle. Birds fly a little bit too fast to be able to do that, but if you once you get trained, you can. But it's very hard to do it on a bird right away unless you've really practiced. Oh, your hand on a white piece of paper, you'll start seeing it will look like white gloss flying off the tips of your fingers. And once someone understands that we are just energy and that we have these auras and that we can play with this, the Lord gave us this energy. It's flowing from the divine through us, is when people can start on their healing journey if they haven't already. It's that gives them that deeper sense of that there are divine beings, and it's more, there's more than what our normal eyes can see, but we can all train ourselves to do it.
You know, I had an experience when my family and I we went down to Monmouth, Oregon, and they were having the eclipse. This is a number of years ago when we were having the full eclipse.
Yeah.
And when that took place, it was like as it was coming over, I looked down on the ground and I saw what looked like water just flowing across the ground. And it was like it was just flowing. It wasn't like the Lee, it was literally this
Yeah.
energy. And I went, this is the first time I've ever seen this. Must, I didn't know what to, how to explain it, but I was like, I could just see this literally energy flowing across. And I went, there is something going on here that is beyond just what we're being told. There's an energy that's happening, and you could just see it flowing. And I went, this is an amazing thing. And then like even the trees, you could start seeing that they were changing. And I that's an amazing thing. I have had situations where I've seen colors and things like that. Um, but that's kind of what you're saying is it there when we are start seeing energy fields. And I mean that's why, I mean, when you think about it for a moment, the whole we know about this because we've got radio waves and
Yes.
microwaves and short waves and
Yeah.
FM waves and UHF waves. And somebody captured that and said, hey, we can just capture those waves. We can send a signal out, that wave's going across, it gets picked up, and now all of a sudden you've got music on the other end. Oh, you've got a TV, the cathode that's the ray is capturing it and it's redoing. And it's like, so the inventors have understood this whole idea that everything is waves, there's electricity going through, and we've harnessed it. I mean, every day we use it, we don't think about it. I'm looking at you through a picture because the waves are going through a little cable and coming out the other side. You and I are on where we're at, we're not touching each other, but we're seeing each other in real life, and that is waves. So the
Yep.
idea that we're not waves and that we can't actually tap into that, and then like you said, so like when you're, let's come back to when you work with somebody. I know we have different colors, like you have almost like they've like a rainbow color within our body,
Yep.
and like purple I think is at the top, the crown, and it goes all the way through. When you are working with an in person who's just deeply in distress or their body's in distress and it's dealing with, will you see a different types of color or even blackness or whatever? How do you describe that when you are working with someone to, like for instance the guy that you couldn't walk in just you weren't getting anything off of him? Talk to us about that. I mean, did you, there was no flow of energy, no flow of electricity, and then you worked with them. Talk to us about that for a moment.
So lots of times I don't combine my seeing auras with energy work. Like
Okay.
I will look at someone and sometimes see their auras and look at that. When I am in the zone where I'm in the conduit for the Lord, I'm in that, and I'm almost not seeing with my eyes, and so I am a 100% feeling person at
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And so I am conscious of the energy running through my body, um, and the energy off that person. So, but other people work different ways. There, I know a lot of other people that see the auras and play with that right at the same time. Now, if I'm working with another person doing energy work, my sister and I used to work a lot together. If I'm sitting at, like, say the person's head, someone's on a table, like a massage table, and she's at the feet, and there's a lot of stuck energy in the person's body that we're feeling like they're just in emotionally, physically, they're just not in great shape.
Right.
In my mind, I gather an energy ball, and it comes across the color of what that person needs. And visually, I can see that color, and I push that energy ball through the person's body, and my sister catches it on the other end. She can feel it. It hits her. She re-energizes it, it gives it a color, and she pushes it back. Now, if we're in sync together, she will say, "Oh, that was yellow. Oh, that was good. Boy, that red hit me." And we'll talk a little bit back and forth. So, and I send red, and she receives red, and she sends yellow back, and I receive yellow. So I can see when I'm doing that type of energy work, then I will see colors. But if I'm just concentrating, like working in hospice, someone's dying of like stomach cancer, and hospice means that you're not promoting that person's life anymore.
Yeah,
You're just
my dad had
you're just yeah
before he
yeah,
yeah,
you're just doing palliative care at that point, trying to make someone as comfortable as possible.
right.
um, so you can give them morphine and stuff like that, but a lot of people, they don't want morphine because
No,
they
my
want.
dad didn't have, I don't think my dad was on anything, and he went to he was 96, and he had had a minor stroke, I believe, on his last fall. When he used to fall a lot, and then he'd get back up and keep going. But when he had the last fall, it was interesting because he went from, okay, he didn't want to get back up, and it was hard for him to get back up, and did a little injury to himself, and then he went into a wheelchair. I remember I went to visit him, and I'm like, Dad, let's go back down to your old room, because he had been in his assisted living home. He had his own apartment. He had this fall, and they put him in a different room so they could be more give him more care. Had him on a little bit of painkiller, and then he came out of it, and so he was like better. And I'm like, Dad, let's get you down to to your room, and it was like all he could do to walk using his walker at that point. And he stopped. He was tired, and then we got down there, and I could tell he was just like, where am I? And so then it was like I discussed with the head gal. I think he had a stroke because his mind was no longer able to focus anymore. He didn't know where he was. He didn't understand anything. And that's when
Right.
it happened so quick. And then I watched about a year's worth of time of him just slowly going, away from us. And then he just died peacefully in his in bed. But we had him on hospice. It was interesting because the head nurse, the manager nurse, she said, if you put your dad on hospice, you guys can come in anytime you want and see him. This is during the COVID years, and
Yeah.
very restrictive on what you could do. You would, see him outside and everything. And she's like, Steve, maybe your dad needs to be on hospice. I'm like, and this is before my dad had the fall. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, no, you don't understand. If he goes on hospice, you automatically get to bypass the red tape. You come on in with your family. Oh, put him on hospice right off the bat. So he was like on hospice for like 2 years. So we got
Yeah.
to go in and visit him, um, during the COVID times when you can't go in, you have to wear a mask, whatever. So we would wear our masks to go in. We go in his room, or we go into the fellowship. I mean, the little conference room. We close the door, and everybody's mask would come off, and we're doing fine and everything. But that was like something you learn about hospice. But you're right, it's not there to bring about healing. It's about there to bring about comfort and ease, and that's where you kind of came in, because you were like, well, gee, I know some alternative ways to cure cancer. And it's like, that was not your position to do that, right? Your position was
No.
walk them
And
through and help them out.
there's a difference between healing and curing.
Yes.
So you could heal someone to a peaceful death,
Yes.
and you're not curing them of cancer, because whatever their body's going to do with the energy that you're giving them is their divine right. And
Yes.
if they're, whether they consciously know it or not, it's they've chosen to leave at that time, then that's what's going to happen. I don't care what you're going to do with holistic health or anything else. It's there's a state of being that that person's passing. It's their time. Um, but you can go in for healing, and healing is taking away the pain. You've healed that person of their pain. So if I could go in with this woman who has stomach cancer, she was just in agony, but I could lay my hands gently on her and comfort her, and so the pain would just absolutely disappear
Wow.
because the morphine wasn't taking it. I wasn't curing her of her
No,
cancer.
no.
I was healing her of the pain that she was suffering at that moment. And it just feels wonderful to have someone touch you, because quite often we're so far removed from death. We hide it. We pretend it doesn't happen. We don't look at it. That's how I was. I mean, when the Lord told me that I was going to be a hospice um, caretaker, I was horrified. I was absolutely horrified. This was not something that I wanted to do in any. I'd never seen a dead body. I was like I didn't see death. I never been a part of it in any aspect of my life. It's so amazing because all the angels, all the family members are there to welcome from the other world. You can feel them quite often come into the room. The person who's passing is quite often talking. Like, I went to sit down one time and they said, "Don't, my aunt's sitting there." And I leaped up. It's just like, but her aunt had been coming every day to visit her, sitting there, said she was coming, she's going to come home soon. And so it's real. Like, the things I saw, the experiences I had were like nothing else. Like, if you want to know what the other world, that it really exists, go volunteer in hospice, go be with people that are passing. It's a absolutely amazing.
Do you find did you find that a lot of people, as they're entering into that part of their life, even if they were, let's say, didn't want a relationship with the Lord at all, that there's a switch that kind of comes on a lot of people's lives, and that the term deathbed conversion, that a lot of people come to a point where they're ready to surrender and they're ready to acknowledge that, yes, I am okay. I've left you out of my life, and I want, did you see that? Because I know there are people that are
I
bitter to the end, and I've heard stories where near death experiences where they didn't see a good thing. They were going to be the other, but I do know of a number of people who, in that last vestiges of life, everything's been removed from their life, everything. And now it's just down to, because I saw that with my grandfather. He spent 6 months in bed in his home. I used to live downstairs, and we had a caregiver, and he spent 6 months in bed, and he had been being introduced to the Lord for many years. But I'd go in there and he says, "I'm just keeping my feet on the path. I mean, he was talking with God at that point. He didn't want to hear anything else. He even confessed his sins to the caregiver. And
yeah.
it was like he had shifted, his whole being shifted. I'm preparing. I know I have to prepare. Did you see that?
I did, and I saw people who asked me, they had never read the Bible, they'd never been interested. And there's a Bible in a bedside in the drawer that I got out and read passages. They said, "Oh, I didn't think that this was real. I didn't know there was really another world, but my husband's here every night. He says I'm coming home. He has a house prepared for us. Like, my mom was here. My mom and dad, but they were young. They were in their 30s, and just having conversations with relatives. And I think quite often that is what switched over, that they're like, "Oh, I didn't think any of this was true." So many atheists um that I experienced had that issue. And so and lots of times I was the only person when someone's passing. So many people die alone. So
Oh,
many.
that's huge. That's huge, Lori.
We are
That's
in a transient world where the person who's passing might live in Philadelphia and their only child lives in California
yes.
and been in hospice for 8 months, and the daughters can maybe come out a couple times, but now it's time for them to pass and they're by themselves. And so I thought that was a particular blessing for me when I got to be with people like that. And I would always just, sometimes they're already in that sort of comatose state and they can still, anything when someone's passing, they still hear you. Whether they're sitting there, they hear you. Anybody who's come out of that said they could hear every word that everyone was saying.
Oh, I firmly believe that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so I usually would just put my hand on the person's heart and I would stroke their head and I sang them gospel songs.
There you go.
I didn't know what religion they were, but because quite, you might never have seen them awake, but they're dying alone. And I did what I felt like I was called to do at that moment. I felt like the Lord would not have put me in that situation if I did not need to be there. So I don't know what this person's thinking or whatever, and I just would sing. I don't have a beautiful singing voice. I sort of have this froggy sounding voice,
I don't think
but
they care.
and when I'm singing in hospice, I sound like an angel. People come up to me and say, "You have the most beautiful angelic voice that I've heard in a long time." It's not me singing. It
Wow.
is absolutely something comes through me because I can
Yes.
hardly carry a tune normally. And so I was very nervous at first when I was singing, like I was just called to sing. When the Lord tells me to do something, I do it. And the Lord said, "Sing." And I was like, "No, I don't really want to sing." "No, you're going to sing." "No, I don't really. This person's not going to enjoy this. You're going to sing." And so it's like, "Okay, I'll sing." And I started singing and I was like, "What is that?" Like I did not recognize my own voice and it felt like an angelic choir. And
Right.
it's interesting. And my first near death experience, that's when I went to this just white, I would say, ball of light and I was standing in the middle of it and I heard just this amazing singing. Um and so that's what I feel like is that when you open up to the Lord, he can use you as a conduit for anything, whether it's a voice and singing, whether it's the right word. Because many times when someone's coming to me and I'm talking to them, they'll say, "That is just exactly what I needed to hear. Can you repeat that?" I have no idea what I said because it's not me speaking. Like when you open up to the Lord like that, he just uses you and I have no idea what I'm saying, but I'm saying the Lord's using me to say what that person needs to hear and it's not for me to hear. And it's a very odd thing, but that's the same way as when I'm doing any type of healing, whether it's Reiki or reconnection or any of that type of work that I'm doing. I'm just like the pen in the writer's hand. I am not the writer, you
Yeah,
know.
I think that's very important. Um I'm thinking my mind just is bouncing back to the earlier where you were talking about the energy and setting people, allowing their bodies just to, oh, I don't feel the pain anymore. And I've had people that are at church where there are lots of prayer for healing, and or an individual will touch that person, and all of a sudden that there's like they call it like they just say there's an energy, there's electricity, something just hit me, a warmth, and all of a sudden I I don't it's not hurting anymore. And I'm thinking, okay, this is all really the same thing here. This
Yeah,
is really
exactly.
it's God working, whether it's energy work, whether it's in a prayer meeting, the mechanics of it are basically the same. You're
Yep.
releasing, you're doing energy work. And when you read about Jesus, it's like he came up and he said, well, he could feel the power leaving him.
Yeah.
And the well, what's that about? Okay, okay. The and so the Eastern side has understood this,
Yes.
and the practitioners. But like I said, a lot of the Western have been boo, boo boo. We don't go that route. And now, I think there is a bridge that's being built of
Yeah.
people are going, hold on, this is all of God. God gave us the seeds, He gave us the plants for healing, and that I do believe that we as human beings, because we're a sin nature, we have a fallen nature in a lot of ways, and we can get enamored with technology. We can get enamored with um, substitute leathers and all these kind of things. I got great jackets that are, waterproof, and I love them and all that. But we can, technologically speaking, we can. Hey, I mean, the people on the dark side, and there are people on the dark side who do not
Yep.
want us to be alive. They want us to keep us sick. There's a small contingent of them. Just listen to Klaus or Bill or any of these guys. Um, they get enamored with the technology. They get enamored with what they can do, how they can manipulate, and how they can. And scientists and all these people get so caught up, they get disconnected from what they're even doing. It's like I think that they've completely absorbed into a dark void, and Jesus said they're blind, and they truly are. And they come up with all these great, quote, they think is great inventions, and we're going to apply them. When in reality, it's removing life. It's taking life away. And anybody who thinks that you have a right to dictate how other people live, much less taint. I mean, we talked about this a little bit the other day. Is when you have, quote, industrialized farm agriculture, and maybe because we don't have enough people that are trained, that it may be part of the schooling and education. um, my dad died at 96 in 2023. He grew up on a farm, not a big farm, probably 5 acres worth. His dad worked in a mill, but they had goats, and they had a cow or two, and they had chickens, and they grew their own vegetables, and they canned everything, and they had a root cellar where they put all the food. They had a well water and stuff, and that was everything pre World War II. A lot of people lived that way.
Yep.
Only the minority lived in cities. The majority lived out in the rural areas, and they had truck, little teeny plots, whether an acre, 5 acres, and they grew their own vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And they still bought stuff at the store like coffee and tea and flour and stuff like that. But they had their own fruit trees. They had nuts. They could do it. And then we moved away post World War II. We really moved away from that, and we went more to the industrialization and technology, and getting into housing tracts and losing out on this idea. And then all these farm areas went fallow. They're. I fly, and when I fly, I look over across the United States. As I'm
Yep.
flying, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can see the patterns, you can see the checkerboards everywhere, but there's nothing there anymore. It's just the remains of what used to be there all over the United States. There's vast tracts of land that is not being used anymore, that at one time was. And I'm thinking, we all migrated off that, and now you have huge farms that take care of all our needs, huge production plants that do all of our meats and our poultry, where it used to be all these areas that I see that are no longer being used. Those were all where people lived, and everybody had those. They would grow their grains and stuff. So knowing this, I'm like, we have really, I think our infatuation with technology and our infatuation with getting everything easy has taken us away from uh, some of the healthiest ways of living.
Well, you hit it right there. It's the easy. Everyone wants it easy. We've made our lives so complicated and so busy that well, the darkies, that purposely we're so stressed out and so busy, we don't have the time. That's exactly what they want us, where they want us. And so we take the easy way out. I have taken the easy way out.
Me too.
I am not saying that I haven't done that. It's what it's how our life is set up. And it's like bringing the consciousness back in. That's what 11 wants to do, is bring the consciousness back in, that literally it is not, it's 4 ingredients to make your own deodorant. It takes maybe 20 minutes at the most to do, and then a couple days for it to harden up. It doesn't have any chemical things in it. Your sweat glands, your pores are all under your arms that are feeding this vital part of your body. And the ingredients list is the nastiest set of ingredients that we put under our arms every single day. And it's just changing that consciousness that what we think is easy, buying this fake perfume that does just destroys our body, these fragrances, and plus the other chemicals in there, rubbing it under our arms because it's easy is killing us. It's just killing us. And it's giving us Alzheimer's, it's giving us cancers, it's dumbing our brains down, so we have the brain fog. It's the bad skin, so you have to 500 different lotions because your skin's all peeling off, the dandruff because your liver is toxic. There's so many things that we're doing that are destroying. All right, this temple, this is a
It's a
temple.
temple. Right.
This is where the divine light is coming down through, that we are energy beings of God. We are in the likeness of God, and that we can do just amazing things with this temple. Just beautiful, amazing. We are strong, we are powerful. We have to start believing that again. And
Yeah.
we're not going to believe it as long as we're filling ourselves up with toxicity. But the problem is no one even knows how to do any of this stuff. We've lost it in 2 generations. Our grandparents did all this canning. You would go to your grandmother's house and open the cupboard, there'd be all sorts of canned
Yep.
food. You
Yep.
always had a year's worth of a winter's worth of food in your root cellar, in your basement, or in your closet. They knew how to preserve food. They grew their own stuff, and in an incredibly short time we lost all that knowledge.
Incredibly. It's literally 2 generations. My grandparents on the farm, they would do that. My wife's grandmother on their farm would do that. And then my mom and dad, they still would buy, they would go, I remember during the summer we'd make applesauce, can it, or I mean they would freeze it, and they would make blackberry, strawberry jelly, freeze it, and then she did some canning. My mom did some canning, but we ate a lot of canned foods and a lot of junk foods. And then my mom got cancer. I think she was in her mid 40s, late 40s, and they had the whole total mastectomy and the whole removal and everything, and went through the treatment. And it was interesting because a friend of mine's mother did the same thing. It was like almost similar time frame. And my mom changed. She got rid of all the junk food. She started buying fresh vegetables, frozen if anything. But she got away from a lot of the canned stuff went away. All the pop, all the candy, all the junk food. She very
Sugar is
limited.
horrible.
So
Yeah.
she just started changing the diet at the household. And I was like, and then she had a very strong faith and a faith community, a good friendship network. And then I thought, my mom lived to 87. And then my friend's mother, she didn't live more than 10 years and she got it again and she died. But she did not have the faith in her life. She didn't have a supportive family, a very abusive husband. And I don't know how they ate. But my mom changed, and having talked to people who deal with cancer on a natural side of things, they said probably that was between the faith and a change of diet completely. Those two things played in a support network, played a huge role in overcoming what could have been a relapse, because a lot of people do get a relapse. And so are you going to have like, will there be like a membership to 11 where you have to
Oh,
pay?
11 is completely free to sign up. You'll be able to get our blogs, our healing library. You can peruse what all these different modalities are. We have lists of everything when you get on the homepage. What is acupuncture? What is Reiki? What is Gua? What is Rolfing? And you can look through and read it in the privacy of your own home. A lot of people don't know. I didn't know what Reiki was. I was too embarrassed to ask, what is Reiki? Before I became a Reiki master. Then it's like, then the Lord says, do energy work. Okay. Then you find out about it. So it's a one-stop shopping. Now, what we're going to have is when someone, so nothing comes out of your pocket if you're a practitioner unless money is coming in. And because we wanted to support the mom and pops, we want to, advertising is so expensive.
Yep.
And so if you're a massage therapist, you're a single mom, you have a bedroom in your house, the kids are off at school, and this is when you're making your living. I have a daughter who does this. How do you advertise? If there's these little things you'll get at Whole Foods, whole paycheck, that you
Yeah, very expensive at that place. Yeah.
and it will be a little natural magazine. Well, it's $500 to get a little for every 3 months to get a little advertising. You don't know if you're going to get anything
Right.
from. So we're free. You can put your own profile on there, and nothing comes out of your pocket unless money's coming in. So if someone books you, then we take 11%
That's
to
a
keep the
that's a
going.
that's a finder's fee, and that's very, very, very reasonable. And I'm very interested because I want to go back to some solutions here. We got a little bit more time, and I want to talk a little bit about some solutions.
Yeah.
I can't change everything. We were talking about organics versus normal, and then I've discovered that you told me, and I think I've heard this else. I heard it somewhere a couple other times, so it was like 3 times. I finally ding ding. Um, Organics, they don't use certain pesticides or herbicides when they grow it, but
Right.
once it's removed, whether the grain or whatever, once it's removed and it's shipped somewhere else, the processors can do what they want to do with
Yeah.
that same item, and then it can change. So I suspect some processors just say, nope, we're leaving it as it is, and it's pure. Other processors get this, and then they go, oh, well, we can, and I've just discovered this, that we can use Roundup in on the wheat and at the end, and they use this to process oats, and I'm like, I don't even understand why they would do that, to be honest. But now they can chemicalize the very thing that we call organic can be chemicalized, and they don't have to list that. Am I correct?
Right.
Isn't that
Right. And so, well, they use the Roundup on the wheat to get the bugs. So you might have the grain stored there for a long time. How do you keep the bugs from eating it? They spray it. And so it's the same thing.
oh, so
Yeah.
it could be organic
It's
grown,
organic. It only has to be grown
but where
organically.
it
It
stays in the
doesn't have to be
silo,
shipped. Yes.
they can add whatever they want to prevent the mold or prevent whatever would happen because we're keeping it there for shipping.
Right. So
Oh,
say you have a grain silo full of grain,
yes.
and trucks come up and they fill up the truck. It's
Yep.
almost like an oil thing. And then it moves to, now it's say that's all organic. It moves to the next station that's owned by a totally different company. Now they have to package and put it in big sacks to be taken to be ground for flour. It could stay there for months. I'm not sure. I don't know how the exactness of this, but
Right.
then they spray it so it doesn't be eaten by bugs in the storage. And then it can be ground. And then so the companies that private companies who've taken the stuff that says organic, they're finding still all sorts of chemicals on there. That's why it's best to buy locally if you can. If it's strawberry season in your town, buy from a local organic thing. There's nobody, you get it right off the field. You can go pick
Right.
your own, wash it. You can freeze it. You can
Oh yeah, we
dehydrate. You can can it. So you get a lot of something at one time, and then you put it in storage. And so that's what, like, we go apple picking, and I find dehydrating much better. I dehydrate meat. I dehydrate beans. I will take all the celery leaves and dehydrate them and powder them to add to stews and soups. So I dehydrated, I guess it was turnips, parsnips, potatoes, carrots, celery, anything that went into a stew. And one week I made a stew with all fresh stuff, and my kids all ate it. And the following week I made it with all dehydrated stuff, except for the beef. I hadn't gotten into dehydrating beef at that point. And I asked them, could they taste the difference? And they could not. Now the carrots will come, they turn gnarly and dry and
Yeah.
hard. And then when you rehydrate them, they turn back into looking carrots. They might have a slightly different texture, but when it's in a stew, it doesn't really matter. And so that's the type of thing. And so the storage, so if you're canning a thing of carrots, it can, you can only fit so much carrots
Right.
in it.
Right.
You dehydrate it, and then you just buy these little O2 packets and put it in, and then you screw on the lid, and there's a suction thing that you get that sucks all the air out. It can last 25 years.
Oh, we've all heard about freeze dried and dehydrated. I've got
Yeah,
a dehydrator out in the garage, and I've been meaning to do that, make my own beef jerky. Um, because then you can put your own seasonings in there. You can do whatever you want, and you know what you're putting in there versus getting the chemicals and nitrates and all that. So dehydrating, okay, great. So you also talked about permaculture, and that is something, um, how to get back your soil. And you talked about you in Florida, you have your farm, and that's where you do your gardening mostly, and that because it's so sandy, you can't grow anything per se on sand, but you build these mounds of layers of cardboard and wood and
yep.
like sticks or whatever, um, and then all sorts of other organic materials in there. You do that, and then they break down. Does it just become does it become soil itself? Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
it all becomes soil. So a hugelkultur mound, this is how you can grow a lot of food in a small area. So even if you have the tiniest yard, what you want to do is you get cardboard. Worms love cardboard. If you have a worm farm, what do? You all you're feeding it is shredded a newspaper. So you do layers and layers of cardboard. You can get it for free at any grocery store. I would try to get the fruit and vegetable cardboard because it doesn't have all the tape and the staples that you have to take off, which
Right.
is a pain in the neck. And then you layer sticks. It depends on how big. Like I have logs in my big hugelkultur mound, but they're huge mounds. So you do sticks, big sticks, little sticks. You throw
Probably
leaves.
flowers, like all the daisies that when they're done, all you just take and clip all the, because I get rid of them. I'm like, they don't decompose very fast on top of my compost pile. But if I cut them and I'm putting layered, now it's
Yeah.
come slowly. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so you can throw all your compost in there, eggshells, anything that you want, especially down at the bottom. But you want to make sure you're soaking it the whole time. So it like run a hose on it. You need water because it has to be, and you want it to rot. So then you throw layers of leaves, pine needles. I have manure and hay, and so I'm layering this over and over and over again, wetting it constantly, and then I cover it with about 3 or 4 inches of topsoil that I make from around the property. The only place we can get soil in Florida is where our cows are, where they feed, and it's compressed over years, or at the bottom of pine trees. If you have a great big pine, we have thousands of pines. If you Usually you have a pine needle bed up. If you scrape it, move that away, you get this real thick, loamy uh, earth there. But you only want to take so much from each
Right,
pine
because
tree down to the pine tree. So don't, and then I cover it back up with the needles. and then I mix that in with other things that I have around the property. But you can get organic soil to put on the top. Then I plant in it. You want greens because you need the nitrogen. You can use urine. You can greens are, if you don't have the nitrogen in it, it's going to be a little bit harder to grow. Black-eyed peas put nitrogen in the soil. So the first thing I do when I make a new hugelkultur mound is I just stick hundreds. You can get bags of they call cow peas, black-eyed peas.
Right, I know what they
Yeah,
are.
dried peas at any grocery store
Yep,
for 89 cents for,
yep.
a couple thousand of them. Stick them all in there, water it, cover it with some hay, and within days you probably see them starting to sprout. And then one of the things what people do is they pull out the weeds and stuff and take them away. With permaculture, what you want to do is pull out the weeds and lay them back down in the
Oh, see, I've been putting my weeds on my compost pile to make the compost, but it's better to just leave them right on and let them just dry.
Yeah, if it's gone to seed, you want to cut the seeds off and throw them away because you don't want it reseeding. But all that nitrogen goes back in. So like lots of times it's called cutting and dropping. There's a great guy named David the Good on YouTube. If you ever want to watch him, he's amazing. Peter Canaris he's in Florida here, and he goes around to all the permaculture places and teaches you each place. Will give you a little lesson. So he goes all over the country, but he's in Washington State. He visits a guy out there who does I think it's Back to Eden gardening. Paul somebody, I forget his names, but you want to visit his farm. In lots of times people do wood chips, lots of wood chips on top of things, because then it compresses down. Like if you want to cut out the weeds in a certain area, put layers and layers of cardboard and then get wood chips dropped and cover that. But when you're doing a hugelkultur, you want to plant lots of plants. You don't want to just plant like in the beginning, you're just doing cowpeas. That's nitrogen. You're pulling that up, laying it down. You can harvest the beans if you want to, but then after that, you want to put a variety all over. So if you get an insect and a beetle that's eating one thing, like a potato bug, it's not all potatoes there. It's going to go from plant to plant to plant. You want to put zinnias and marigolds for the things. You want to put a pepper and tomato. So we have this idea that for our home gardens that all tomatoes go here and all the ginger goes there. And that's not actually how nature grows. Like
No,
if
no.
out in the woods, and that's how we keep from having diseases. So there's all sorts. So it's easy, like make a hugelkultur mound, put potato on one end and a potato on the other, tomatoes here and peppers there. And so the bugs aren't jumping from plant to plant eating things, but you can feed an entire family out of one good hugelkultur mound. And then it just decays. And then at the end of the season, you dump more layers on, because it will, like if I have a 3-foot high hugelkultur mound, within a year or two, it will be like 1.5 feet. It all just decays down. Now, the longest I went without watering my one big mound, I think was 7 months. And when I went in there and stuck my hand, it was still wet and moist. So that's the
Wow.
whole point, is you're getting rid of the constant watering and taking care of.
Wow. I am definitely, I've got some farming books. My son's got me planting books and things like that. I know that it's interesting here in the Northwest. I just definitely need to bring back vitality to my garden. And I've got certain areas where it just gets beat with the sun. And then other areas, I have a sprinkler system, so I just run that all the time. And my raspberries produce really, really good. And my blueberries, finally, I figured out how to fertilize them with the right fertilizer. But my vegetables, The only thing that really grows is some herbs that just come back. You can't kill them, and then we get kale all through the
Yep,
winter, even in the freezing
yep,
weather.
yeah,
The
kale do that.
kale is still growing. And the other thing I've noticed in our area is cabbage will grow throughout
Yep,
the winter as well.
yes,
And I'm
it
like,
is.
maybe that's why they are so good for you because they're some of the hardiest plants that through the winter, the kale is still grow. I can go out and cut leaves off of it, bring it in and put it in my stir fry. I haven't, my neighbor grows, they're Korean and they do um, these really beautiful flowers all the way around their garden. And they use that. And then some of them are sesame seed flower, whatever, sesame flowers. But they have all these around there. And then they have other flowers all within or around all
Yep,
their
you
vegetables.
want to do that.
And I think
It
it's because
pollinates.
it keeps pollinating and it keeps out the bad bugs.
Bugs. Yep. Marigolds and zinnias and stuff like that, particularly good. That's absolutely true. And what we don't realize, we think that we have to have these. Now, I am building a huge food forest here where you can just walk through it, bananas and oranges and peaches and just an enormous amount of stuff. But if you just want to get food from your own backyard, you can create the most enormous amount of food. And quite often, there is a second planting in the fall. Like if you plant carrots in September and don't harvest them, you can leave them in the ground all winter long. They will be the sweetest carrots. Carrots that are kept in the ground all winter are much sweeter and nutrient and dense than you can pull them up in the winter or in the springtime. But if you want a really sweet carrot, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, my neighbor, I have to watch him because he'll plant certain things in the fall, and then the garlic comes around in it produces later on in the spring. All of a sudden, he's harvesting garlic right off the bat, and the cabbage is later in the season. And I'm like, man, they got it, and it's the way they can offset their costs. It's it's a way for them to survive, and of course, they make lots of kimchi and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, they converted all their yard, and I'm slowly doing more of that. And I'm like, I'm going to convert even more yard into. But I mow my lawn, and I take all the grass clippings and I put them at the bottom of all my raspberry bushes, and
Yeah,
they love that because the
yeah,
nitrogen breaks down, and then it just the raspberries just flourish, and I get in ours, they start in middle of the summer and it goes all the way till freezing. So it just I've got a couple varieties and they just keep producing. So as soon as the summer crop's over, the fall crop's coming in, and I'm out there in the winter or just before frost, and I'm still picking, and they start getting moldy because it's so rainy up here. But
yeah.
um, but now the strawberries that we have, they only small production and limited, and then they're done. It's kind of strawberries take up a lot of room and don't produce a lot. And so, but my blueberries, I'm trying to get them to grow. Um, but this is really, really good. And I want to see if there's anything, is there anything else? We talked about, you and I both know that the whole COVID narrative, the whole thing it was a planned situation and it was carried out. And the I think the silver lining is this, that a number of people have woken up to recognize
Absolutely.
that the government that we have is not our friend, and now they're investigating. They're on their beginning of their journey of investigating. And I even heard the statistics that a lot of people who got one shot said no more. I,
Yeah,
I, I'm not. And I have people in my life who've gotten every one of them.
yeah.
But I also believe that some of that stuff's saline solution too. But I'm I'm very optimistic. I am not a very pessimistic kind of guy. I examine the deepest and darkest stuff. I understand, but I'm not into fear. I'm into faith. I'm into, you know what? This has been going on for a long time. It's just that now we're waking up to it. So
Absolutely.
now people like yourself with 11.com, and I'm going to put all this in the links of the show, and others are exploding. I mean, the podcasts that have come on scene in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8 years, focusing on what we're talking about is just exploding, and people are
Absolutely.
finally waking up. And I still see, I still within the church setting, there are people waking up in that setting. Um, there's a lot of indoctrination, bad theology that's in most churches, and there needs to be a lot of work. I tell people, I go, if you're really a follower of Jesus and you're allowing the light of Jesus, see the world in his eyes. Does did he come to bring war or peace? Is he a prince of peace, or is he the prince of war? Well, we know who the prince of war is, and that's Satan. And if anything that you're supporting is about maiming, killing, and destroying, then maybe you rethink what your belief system is, because God came to give us life and life abundant. And the thief, the Satan, came to steal, rob, and murder. And I am trying to work. That's where I've been focusing a lot of my energy for several years, and especially in the last year or so, is helping people within a fellowship church setting is, guys, your belief system is supporting these guys and supporting our own government doing evil a bunch against innocent people. Wake up. And some people are starting to, okay, Steve, oh, oh, and I go, yeah, 50, 60, 70 years, 80 years of your life, you believe that America is a good country and we vanquish the evildoers. And I'm like, no, we're the terrorists. We're the ones that are doing terror. But you
Yeah.
and I can't necessarily control that, but we can control our bodies, our minds, our spirit, and we can share the light.
Yeah. We give
And
people options,
yes. So
knowledge.
is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap this up?
No, just come and join us. We will be looking for, so we will be launching this month and then we'll be onboarding practitioners. But we also want to be the largest database for holistic health. So we're looking for holistic doctors and people that are masters in their trade, giving us information, whether it's permaculture to a Reiki master to massage therapists. Like, if you have information, like, what did the old babushka women do? What did the Native American Indians do? What did the New Zealand Maori do? Like, there's healing medicines out there. There's knowledge out there. And I think as our 11 team, that knowledge is passing from the earth now. Like we were saying, that the grandmothers, they knew how to do this. Well, the 80, 90-year-old people that are passing have this knowledge that we don't have.
Yes.
Plant medicine and understanding the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars and how everything works and moves together. And what we really want to do is, like, time is in the essence. Go talk to your grandmother, go talk to your grandfather, go talk to the great aunts and uncles, ask them what they did, write it down, give it to 11.com so we can share it with the world. That's what we really want people to do. Yes, 11's gonna make money, but that isn't the process. We want to make money to open up healing centers, to give people information. That's why this is for free, for people to understand. All the information is free. For our client, someone who just wants to peruse the site, it's all of that is free, because we believe this information should be out there. The only time we're going to charge is when someone books a practitioner. So we're looking to onboard practitioners very soon. We're looking for clients. We're looking for information. We want people to have a one-stop shopping. Eventually, when we get the money up, all the profit, we give 11% of our profits to our 501(c)(3) company called 11 Gives, which we are then going to turn around and help other companies get up off the ground, because we believe there's a revolution going on, and it has to start from the ground up.
Yep.
This
Yep.
It has to start with the people. It is not going to be with the government.
No.
It is not going to be with the hierarchy. We become a nanny state where we're just like, give, give, give. We don't want to think, just to make it easy for us. That mentality has to stop. And how we're going to do that is by supporting people from the ground up. You need help, you have an idea, come to us. Like, that's how, like, we want to get more and more people involved in how to make this a grassroots revolution where we say enough is enough. We're going to grow our own food. We're going to talk to each other without the other people interfering, so that we can spread information. We can get people thinking. We can get people experimenting. You're going to grow a garden. It's not going to work all great the first time. Who cares? Do it again.
Oh, I've learned, and the other thing I want to point out is this: is that if we can help people find healing,
Yes,
healthy people make healthy choices.
absolutely great.
Sick people make sick choices. Hurt people make hurt choices. Broken people make broken choices. We want to bring people to a healthy, wealthy, and wise mindset, and not a broken, deteriorating mindset. And that's my call. That's why I formed this thing called the Lion Zone. Teach people how to be lions and not the prey in a world of hungry jackals and vicious wolves, because we know who the enemy are now. We don't have to pretend we don't know there's enemies out there. Our job is to be a lion. And lions, as I've told people before, a lion takes care of their pride, and your pride is your family and your community. And the lions, the male, they're strong, and the women and men work together. There's not the women will go out and hunt, the men will oversee, and then when a usurper comes in there, the male protects the cubs and protects the families. And that's the job I see of myself and all people, is that we need to be lions so that we take charge, and our community, we protect one another. And Jesus was the great shepherd. And so again, not the wolf. Hirelings come in. They're thieves. They don't care about the flock. And a lot of pastors, a lot of leaders, a lot of pseudo whatever are hirelings. They're there to take advantage of you. But good-minded people like you, Laurie, and others who practice want to shepherd people, want to help people and bring healing. And I love what you're doing, and I'm glad I was able to bring you on. I want to tell people that it's ELEV3N.com, and it's going to be about the end of February that you're going to be up and running.
Yep. Onboarding practitioner. So if you're a practitioner out there or know someone, send them our way. We would love to have them.
Well, perfect. Folks, I want to say thank you for joining me, and thank you, Laurie, for coming on the Lion Zone. If you guys like what I'm doing, make sure to like and share the show with all your friends. So until next time, as I always like to say, I'm Steve Johan saying, be a lion and not the prey.